The year is 1918. The world stands at a crossroads as the echoes of gunfire fade into the distance. The armistice has been signed, and the long, grueling conflict known as the Great War has finally come to an end. The guns have fallen silent on the Western Front. Soldiers, weary and battle-worn, lay down their arms, their faces etched with relief and sorrow. The once thunderous battlefields now lie in eerie silence, a stark contrast to the chaos that reigned just days before. The Great War, a conflict of unprecedented brutality and destruction, has finally come to an end. The landscapes, once vibrant and full of life, are now scarred and desolate. Cities that stood as symbols of human achievement are reduced to rubble, a testament to the war's devastating power. Millions lie dead, victims of a war that was supposed to end all wars. The sheer scale of the loss is incomprehensible, with entire generations wiped out. Memorials and mass graves dot the continent, each one a somber reminder of the human cost of this global conflict. Europe, once a beacon of progress and enlightenment, is in ruins. The cultural and intellectual heart of the world has been shattered, its cities and towns left in tatters. The war has not only destroyed buildings and infrastructure, but has also left deep psychological scars on its people. The war's legacy is a continent scarred physically and emotionally. The landscapes bear the marks of countless battles, and the people carry the weight of their experiences. Efforts to rebuild are underway, but the road to recovery is long and fraught with challenges. From the trenches of France to the plains of Eastern Europe, entire landscapes have been transformed into desolate wastelands. The once fertile fields are now barren, littered with the remnants of war. The scars of the conflict are visible everywhere, a constant reminder of the devastation that occurred. The economic cost is staggering, leaving the victors and vanquished alike grappling with crippling debt and shattered economies. Factories lie in ruins, and the workforce is decimated. Breadlines and unemployment are rampant, as nations struggle to rebuild their economies from the ground up. The war has also left an indelible mark on the political and social fabric of Europe. The old social orders have been upended, and new ideologies are taking root. Protests and strikes are common as people demand change and a better future. The political landscape is in turmoil, with power struggles and unrest becoming the norm. Empires have crumbled, replaced by a patchwork of new nations grappling with their newfound independence. The Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German and Russian empires have all fallen, giving rise to a host of new countries. These fledgling nations face the daunting task of establishing themselves in a world forever changed by war. The old order has been swept away, leaving behind a vacuum of power and a profound sense of disillusionment. The promises of a better world have been shattered, and the people are left to navigate an uncertain future. The political chaos is palpable, with new leaders and movements vying for control. The stage is set for a new era, one fraught with uncertainty and the lingering shadows of a war that will forever shape the course of the 20th century. As Europe transitions into this new phase, the lessons of the Great War will loom large, influencing decisions and shaping the destiny of nations for generations to come. In the aftermath of World War I, the victorious Allied powers convene in Paris to determine the fate of defeated Germany. The world watches with bated breath as leaders from around the globe gather to negotiate the terms of peace. The stakes are high, and the decisions made here will shape the future of Europe and the world. The conference is marked by intense debates and differing visions for the post-war order. The Allied leaders, driven by a desire to prevent another devastating conflict, seek to impose strict measures on Germany to ensure it can never again threaten global peace. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, becomes the cornerstone of the post-war settlement. It is a document of immense significance, representing the collective will of the Allied powers to reshape the geopolitical landscape. The treaty includes numerous provisions aimed at curbing Germany's military capabilities, redrawing national boundaries, and establishing new international norms. The signing ceremony is a moment of triumph for the Allies, but it also marks the beginning of a new and uncertain chapter in European history. However, instead of fostering reconciliation and lasting peace, the treaty fuels resentment and instability. The German delegation, feeling humiliated and betrayed, returns home to a nation in turmoil. The harsh terms of the treaty, including severe territorial losses and military restrictions, are met with widespread anger and disbelief. Protests erupt across Germany, and the seeds of resentment are sown deep within the German populace. The treaty, intended to secure peace, instead becomes a source of enduring conflict and division. The treaty's harsh terms are a bitter pill for Germany to swallow. The war guilt clause, which places sole responsibility for the war on Germany, is particularly galling. German officials and citizens alike are outraged by this clause, viewing it as a gross injustice. The national psyche is deeply wounded, and the sense of humiliation and betrayal permeates every level of society. Newspapers and public discourse reflect the widespread discontent, and the treaty becomes a rallying point for nationalist and extremist movements. Germany is forced to accept sole responsibility for the war, a clause that becomes known as the war guilt clause. This clause not only tarnishes Germany's international reputation, but also serves as a constant reminder of its defeat and subjugation. Political cartoons and public speeches criticize the clause, and it becomes a symbol of the broader injustices perceived to be inflicted by the treaty. The war guilt clause is a focal point of German resentment and a catalyst for future political upheaval. This humiliation cuts deep into the German psyche, creating a sense of injustice that will fester in the years to come. The returning soldiers who had fought bravely for their country now find themselves in a nation that feels betrayed and humiliated. Public protests and demonstrations become commonplace as the population grapples with the harsh realities imposed by the treaty. The sense of national pride is severely damaged, and the collective memory of this period will haunt Germany for decades. Beyond the symbolic, the treaty imposes crippling economic reparations on Germany. These reparations are intended to compensate the Allied powers for the immense costs of the war, but they place an unbearable burden on the already struggling German economy. Factories lie in disrepair, and the economic infrastructure is in shambles. The reparations exacerbate the economic difficulties faced by the German people, leading to widespread poverty and hardship. The economic clauses of the treaty are seen as punitive and excessive, further fueling resentment. The burden of these payments further cripples the German economy, already devastated by the war. Hyperinflation takes hold, and the value of the German mark plummets. Ordinary citizens find their savings wiped out, and the cost of basic necessities skyrockets. Breadlines and poverty become common sights in German cities as the population struggles to survive in the face of economic collapse. The social fabric of the nation is strained to the breaking point, and the economic turmoil creates fertile ground for political extremism. The loss of territory and industrial heartlands exacerbates Germany's economic woes. Key industrial regions, vital to the nation's economic recovery, are ceded to neighboring countries. The occupation of the Ruhr by Allied forces further hampers Germany's ability to rebuild its economy. The territorial losses are not just a blow to national pride, but also a significant impediment to economic stability. The combination of territorial, economic, and political pressures creates a volatile situation that threatens the fragile peace. The Treaty of Versailles, while intended to prevent future conflicts, ultimately sows the seeds of resentment and instability. The political landscape of Weimar Germany is marked by constant turmoil and instability. Anti-treaty demonstrations and political violence become frequent occurrences as various factions vie for power and influence. The treaty, rather than securing a lasting peace, creates a breeding ground for future conflicts and sets the stage for the rise of extremist ideologies. The harsh terms imposed on Germany, combined with the political and economic turmoil gripping Europe, create fertile ground for extremist ideologies and set the stage for another global conflict. The rise of extremist parties, including the nascent Nazi movement, is a direct consequence of the widespread discontent and instability. Hitler's early speeches tap into the deep-seated anger and frustration of the German people, promising a return to national greatness and revenge against those who imposed the humiliating treaty. The seeds of resentment sown by the Treaty of Versailles will ultimately lead to the outbreak of World War II, as the world once again plunges into chaos and destruction. The 1920s witness a brief period of economic recovery in Europe. Cities are bustling with activity, markets are thriving, and factories are humming with the sounds of production. This era, often referred to as the Roaring Twenties, is marked by a sense of optimism and progress. People are hopeful that their horrors of the First World War are behind them and that a new era of prosperity is on the horizon. However, this fragile prosperity is built on shaky foundations. The economic recovery is uneven, with some sectors and regions benefiting more than others. Banks and financial institutions eager to capitalize on the boom engage in risky lending practices. Stock markets soar to unprecedented heights, fueled by speculation and a sense of invincibility. Yet, beneath the surface, there are signs of trouble. The war's economic aftershocks, coupled with structural weaknesses in the global financial system, culminate in the Great Depression. The stock market crash of 1929 is the most visible sign of the impending disaster, but the roots of the crisis run much deeper. Banks begin to fail, businesses close their doors, and unemployment rises sharply. The social fabric of many communities starts to fray as people struggle to make ends meet. The Depression, which begins with the Wall Street crash of 1929, sends shockwaves across the globe. The interconnected nature of the world's economies means that no country is immune to the effects of the downturn. International trade grinds to a halt, and countries that rely on exports find themselves particularly vulnerable. The economic crisis quickly becomes a global phenomenon, affecting millions of lives. Europe, still struggling to recover from the war, is hit particularly hard. The continent's economies, already weakened by the costs of reconstruction, are ill-prepared to deal with the sudden collapse in demand. Factories that once produced goods for a booming market now stand idle. Bread lines become a common sight in cities across Europe as people wait for hours to receive basic necessities. The sense of hope that characterized the 20s is replaced by a deep sense of despair. Unemployment skyrockets, businesses collapse, and millions are plunged into poverty. The social safety nets that exist are quickly overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the crisis. Families lose their homes, and many are forced to live in makeshift shelters or on the streets. The psychological toll of the Depression is immense, as people grapple with feelings of shame, hopelessness, and anger. The fabric of society is stretched to its breaking point. In Germany, the economic crisis becomes a catalyst for political extremism. The Weimar Republic, already struggling with political instability and social unrest, finds itself unable to cope with the economic collapse. Protests and strikes become increasingly common as people demand action from a government that seems paralyzed by indecision. The sense of national humiliation stemming from the Treaty of Versailles adds fuel to the fire. The Weimar Republic, already weakened by internal divisions and political instability, proves incapable of effectively addressing the crisis. The government's attempts to implement austerity measures only deepen the suffering of the population. Riots and clashes with the police become a regular occurrence as the streets of German cities become battlegrounds. The political landscape becomes increasingly polarized, with extremist parties gaining support. The German people, desperate for solutions, become increasingly receptive to radical ideologies that promise economic salvation and national renewal. Political parties that offer simple solutions to complex problems gain traction. Propaganda becomes a powerful tool as parties use it to spread their message and rally support. The promise of a return to national greatness resonates with a population that feels betrayed by its leaders. The Great Depression's social and economic turmoil creates a climate of fear and uncertainty, paving the way for the rise of demagogues who exploit the desperation of the masses to seize power. Charismatic leaders emerge, offering hope and direction in a time of chaos. They use the tools of modern mass communication to reach a wide audience, promising to restore order and prosperity. The allure of strong leadership becomes irresistible to many. The Nazi Party, with its message of national unity and economic revival, gains traction in this environment of despair and disillusionment. Adolf Hitler, with his powerful oratory and promises of a better future, becomes a symbol of hope for many Germans. The party's propaganda machine works tirelessly to spread its message, using rallies, speeches, and posters to galvanize support. The seeds of a dark chapter in history are sown in the fertile ground of economic and social collapse. The aftermath of World War I sees the collapse of empires and the birth of new nations. Democracy, once a beacon of hope, struggles to take root in this tumultuous landscape. The war has left many disillusioned with traditional political systems, creating an opening for extremist ideologies to flourish. In Germany, the Weimar Republic, established in the wake of the war, faces an uphill battle from the outset. Saddled with the blame for the war and the burden of reparations, the Republic struggles to maintain legitimacy in the eyes of many Germans. Political violence becomes a regular occurrence in Germany and other parts of Europe. Street battles between rival political factions, including communists and fascists, become increasingly common. This atmosphere of instability and fear further erodes public confidence in democratic institutions. The failure of democracy to provide stability and economic security creates an opening for totalitarian movements to exploit. The Nazis, with their promises of order and national revival, capitalize on this disillusionment, skillfully manipulating public fears and resentments to their advantage. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.